Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Même you can speak. Wap capable parler, wap capable parler après, ok? Wap capable parler après, ok? You will be able to speak after this item. That's what I just said in Creole. It is now. It is now 8 minutes past 9 p.m. The meeting is back in session. We have now our Madam Director who is going to make a presentation on the last item that was read on the LDRs.
Actually, Mayor, if I may, we had some discussion during the break, and I think the staff should just be sworn in real quick. I don't see the clerk, so if you don't mind, I'm going to just swear them.
I thought I heard the clerk said if they are staff, they don't have to be sworn in.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Okay, good.
So raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You may speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Tanya Wilson-Sejour, Planning Director with Community Planning and Development. I will read the staff recommendation into the public record. Staff requests that pursuant to the provisions of Article 3, Division 10, Section 3-106 of the City of North Miami Land Development Regulation, the City Council review the proposed update to the current LDRs and to the accompanying official zoning map described in the above ordinance title and as attached hereto, Composite Exhibit A, to ensure consistency with the city's adopted 2015 Air-Based Comprehensive Plan Amendment. That's the 2015 Plan Amendments. Consider Planning Commission recommendation as articulated in Attachment 4, and any testimony at the public hearing and adopt the proposed update by passage of the attached ordinance. Just to provide an overview, the Mayor and Council will recall that back in June of 2016, you adopted the city's comprehensive plan that was transmitted to the State Department of Economic Opportunity. State statute under Florida Statute Chapter 163 requires that within 12 months of the adoption of the comprehensive plan, the city move forward with adoption of its land development regulation. So that's where we are today with adoption of the city's LDRs. Some cities call it the zoning code. We do know that the zoning code is your implementing arm. The overarching vision and all the extensive meetings that we had last year really laid the groundwork for the vision of development within the city across 10 chapters of the comprehensive plan. Tonight, what we're focusing on is really just the implementation standards. So what we had starting in January of this year were a series of community meetings. We had the kickoff meeting in January, 3 subsequent neighborhood meetings, East, Central, and West held within the city. Extensive discussions did transpire out of those meetings. It was important that we were in a listening mode. We wanted to hear from the residents within the last 7 years, some of the things that were working in the code. Oftentimes in the planning community, we describe the code as a fluid document. You know, it's things that over time you have to tweak to make it current with the current market conditions, to make sure it's competitive. You're in a region where everyone is trying to attract the best of the best development, to attract new business, to promote growth, sustain your local economy. So certainly you want to make sure that your code is always up to date and it's always market friendly. I want to emphasize that. So certainly we were very successful, I believe, in partnering with our project manager that we have on board, Ms. Debbie Love. Debbie has over 30 years of experience in urban planning. She's worked in so many different jurisdictions, and we were happy to have her bring in innovative ideas and different initiatives that have been implemented across the state of Florida. We also partnered with our attorney, Mr. Gary Held, and I have both of them here if they could stand, so the audience can see who's been painstakingly working on these LDRs over the last 6 months. And I do say painstaking. Rain, snow, or shine, our consultants were available on board, scrubbing the documents on the legal side, Mr. Held, to make sure it was legally sufficient. Debbie, of course, bringing in the expertise of over 30 years and making sure that we had a code that was cutting edge and on the forefront. So I'm happy to have worked with both in this process, and it's been an extremely rewarding experience. So with that, I'm going to invite Miss Debbie Love, if you could come forward. Debbie has a very brief presentation just to share with the public some of the things that were gathered in the community forums, and then very brief talk about some of the lessons learned and how we can move forward tonight with the actual amendments. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Again, as Tanya said, my name is Debbie Love, and some of you know me, and because we've worked together on other projects. This has been a fantastic experience. Your staff is amazing. So with that, for us, this has been an interesting journey because the Land Development Code was last updated in 2009, and you haven't had that many updates over time, so this has been probably one of your larger updates that you've had. Again, as Tanya said, you did your 2015 Comprehensive Plan update, and what we did was we began by reviewing the existing code. What do you have now? What's working? What's not? Looked at the Comprehensive Plan, what it required, took a look at the future land use map and the zoning maps. And then really we made some key observations through staff as to what they thought was problematic in the code, things that they've run up against, problems that they have come across over time. Then we actually went out in the field. One of the critical things is to know what's on the ground, what's around, what's there. We did some GIS analyses to look at everything from the different uses you have on the ground, what the community character is like now, because if you don't know what you have, and what's working and what's not, and how can you write your code. We inventoried everything from bicycle amenities to the building characteristics. You know, how old are they? How high are they? Where are they set back? We took a look at your environmental conditions as well as everything from parks and your open spaces and what kind of plazas and things like that do you have. We started in December, and January, as Tanya said, we did those public input meetings. It was a pretty intensive time of trying to get a lot of meetings in various locations throughout the city because you did have a compressed time frame. In March, we delivered a draft to staff. We started a lot of conversation with them. That was quite interesting and a lot of fun for all of us, I think. I'm speaking from my experience, my personal experience working with staff on this. And then we went to the Planning Commission in May, and we are here at the first reading. So that's essentially where we are in the schedule. Now, as Tanya said, we did these workshops, but we did hear some very common themes throughout the workshops. Affordable housing was definitely one of those common themes. People wanted us to take a look at, you know, what is the code doing for businesses? Is it increasing businesses? Does it make it more attractive? Or is it problematic? Is the code causing some problems? Lighting was very important to the community. Safety, they didn't feel like the lighting was adequate. How to deal with waterfront uses, and what about the parking? Do we have enough? Is it problematic as far as how the code is written to understand it? They wanted to really restrict and look at some uses as maybe not being as prevalent maybe in the city, and encourage green projects. So that was part of the whole sustainability, and you'll see a whole section on that. They wanted mixed use, and they really wanted to encourage development that was attractive and looked good. So in our goals, we had 4 goals. 1 was to incorporate the comprehensive plan amendments. 2 was to promote economic development. 3 was to streamline everything, make it easier to get through the code, understand the code, and then update the permitted uses. We had 3 sub-goals out of that was enhanced neighborhood transition standards, and that was really important. Let's make the development that you do get high quality. So we have some design standards in there now. And there were some new laws on the books, for example, as relative to signage that we wanted to make sure was incorporated. So with that, I can go through and give you some high level on the different articles, a little summary. And Mr. Mayor, after this, would you like to let me know how you would like to proceed after I do this high level overview, sir? Okay? All right, in Article 1, there was really not a whole lot of changes. We had to do some cleanup, some housekeeping, making sure that the departments' names were correct, and kind of make and expand on and clarify the districts in the city to make sure they were matching what your comprehensive plan called for. In Article 2, one of the biggest changes there was bringing in the Downtown Action Plan Advisory Committee and creating a zoning appeals board. We also, again, had some housekeeping, and you'll see that throughout the document, name corrections, things like that, editorial things along those lines. We did put in some new qualifications for Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment members. In Article 3, there was some text amendments, but they were really about making sure everybody understood what submittal requirements were necessary. What are you going to have to submit when you come into the city, and what are the review standards subsequent to when you submit your application? We looked at the appeals process to make sure that it was, there was a solid and everybody understood it and it was less confusing. One of the things that we had to do was to bring your subdivision codes up to make it consistent with Miami-Dade County. Article 4, in Article 4, bear with me just a moment, sir. There we go. In Article 4, we had some different zoning districts that we needed to add, and we created a table so that you have all of your permitted uses in one table by district. Makes it much easier. We've added some additional uses to that. We brought in the planned corridor overlay district, which was from the comprehensive plan, added these other corridors, and added your new Bayshore zoning district. We then broke down the PD into PD1, PD2, and PD3, which matches up with your comprehensive plan mixed use, low, high, and medium. Let's see what else. In 5, this is where a lot of changes occurred in 5. It went from 22 divisions to 23 divisions. We relocated and expanded the tree preservation and protection, and when you go into your definitions, the majority of the new definitions come from that, and that was existing ordinance that you already had that was moved into the LDRs. We also now have a provision regulating and permitting the use of bioswales, which is critical. We merged Division 12 and consolidated with Division 9. So we streamlined a lot of the entire division. We brought in the alcoholic beverages from outside of the code into the LDRs. And we created a new accessory uses and structure section and expanded on that. In Article 6 deals all with non-conformities. We expanded it to retitle it to cover structures, and we made it more predictable, created some additional limitations for development. So we wanted to make sure that those that are grandfathered in had clarity on the existence of their uses and their structures and their lots that may be now legally non-conforming, and dealt with a little bit more specificity in how to deal with non-conforming uses, allowing them to change from one non-conforming use to another. And then what happens when one of these structures gets destroyed. And again, as I said, in Article 7, we had updated definitions, but the majority, again, came from your new landscaping tree section. The zoning map, not a whole lot of changes that we think are super critical, because one of the things that we had to do was bring in your new overlay districts out of your comprehensive plan and assign them to their proper locations on your zoning map. We also brought in and identified your Bayshore zone, and again, renamed the PD to PD1, PD2, PD3. And then your zoning map had a lot of inconsistencies with your future land use map, because over time, you've updated your future land use map, but the zoning was not updated, so we took care of all of those in one fell swoop. And at the end, we'll talk about some things that we need direction from. And so with that said, sir, I'm going to back up, and you tell me how you would like to handle the review process, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very eloquently well presented. And at this time, I believe if staff doesn't have anything more to add, Mr. Manager, we can only have one meeting at a time. Do you have anything more to add?
Actually, I have staff that's ready to put some items on the record, the items that I gave you.
Anything else for them?
So there's some items, Mr. Mayor, that you had asked for staff to read into the record based on the Planning Commission's recommendation. So I'll do that at this
No,
time.
we can't do that until we have public hearing. I simply, No, I thought staff had anything else to add.
There's nothing else to add beyond.
No?
just
Okay,
this.
so we have to open it to the public now. This is time for public hearing where everybody has. Hmm? No, no, there you go. No. Well, what I'm proposing is that we do public hearing, and after public hearing, each of us will have the opportunity to present our amendments, and then we will vote on them as. No, it doesn't have to be by article. Just make your list of amendments.
But we have to vote on it.
Yeah, exactly. On the amendments as they present.
Okay.
Yeah. At this time, public hearing is open. You can you can sit down if you want, but if you want to remain standing, that's.
I just want to make sure I take notes.
Well, you can remain. Oh yeah, well, whichever.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessica Alston, 1140 Northwest 125 Street. First, I want to say that what has been presented to us is very vague. Very, 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 very vague. Tab J. I stand in complete opposition to changing to the alcoholic beverages section 3. We do not want to leave the door open for clubs, massage parlors, a casino, and other kinds of business establishments that use the use of alcohol as a fundamental portion of their serving the public. I live in Sunkist Grove, and we want to maintain and still be a suburban community and to be community friendly. I stand in opposing the slimlining of these some of these proposals having to do with signage. We don't want a Las Vegas on 7th Avenue. We don't want a casino on our side of town. We don't want it. We don't want to have, as has been proposed, which is not seen here, the design of a tenement slum. These buildings, which will be 10 stories high, even proposed residence of 50 square feet per resident area is absolutely unacceptable. It's just planning for a slum. We don't want that. We don't want to have reject the notion that there should be a statue of POTUS number 1, George Washington, somehow representing the residents, displaced residents.
Miss Ashton, as you can see, this
Okay, I know. Let me finish this thought, please.
because if I allow you, then I have to do it for everybody else, and I cannot do that. You have 2 minutes, and that's it, please. Next person. Thank you very much. Not that I'm against you, but, do Alex said Lex.
Let me finish my sentence. You could have let me finish my sentence.
I'm
I
sorry.
sat here all of this time. You could have allowed me to finish my sentence.
Eliana Albarran, 849 Northeast 121st Street. I came here not for a city council meeting, but for an LDR and zoning meeting that was supposed to be held today from 7 to 9 p.m. Public hearing that I'm assuming is to get input into the zoning and land development regulations, which these plans do not have. It is not okay to take a vote without proper public hearing. Again, this just wasted my whole day, 7 to 9 p.m. on a land and development public hearing. So I hope that you guys don't vote on this item until the public actually has time to see what's being proposed and give their comments, because development really, you know, is important to have citizen input, as Jane Jacobs, you know, urban planner has, you know, informed. So I really just hope that you guys don't do this in the future. I know that the livelihoods of all of us are affected by how we, you know, proposed the zoning. So this is very important, and you just can't vote without enough public hearing on the issue.
I want to, Miss Ashton, it's Miss Ashton, right? I want to say to you, it's just the regulations of our meeting is we allocate 2 minutes, you know, per intervention. I want to remind you that you will have the opportunity to be heard again at Citizens Forum after we are through with this item. So please stick around. Do not go anywhere, because it is your business to make the business of your city your business. So you will have the opportunity to be heard again. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Iracema Pires. I live in 810 Northeast 123rd Street, and I'm also opposed of this zoning. We also are here for the meeting of the LDR, which has not been taking place. And we do need a public hearing of us residents of this voting of the zoning map, because in the map it says one thing, but really when it's presented in other meetings that I've been, it's not really what it is in the maps. So we as residents, we really need to be educated and really showing exactly what is gonna be, because in papers it's beautiful, but in reality it's a lot of question marks for us. Thank you.
Hi, Erica Peterson, 811 Northeast 123rd Street. I also want to speak on the LDRs. I think we went through everything really quickly, and I know there's a lot of new zoning areas that I have no clue about. I haven't had time to read the new LDRs. I think it's a few hundred pages. I think we really deserve more community forum time to go over these. The NRO boundary, moving that has been really problematic for a lot of us. We're very worried about our property values. These things deserve a lot more attention than just being glossed over at 9 o'clock at night. Thank you.
Now, Madam Director, how many how many town hall meetings did we have on this? Four town hall meetings over the course of how long? How many months? We did them in different parts in different districts of the city. How many people do you think were present in each town hall meetings?
Speak on the microphone.
So we had 4 neighborhood meetings within the span of a 2-month period. And
One in each district?
Correct.
Okay.
And then we had an actual planning commission, 2 planning commission meetings held on the topic.
So that's 6 meetings.
Correct.
How many people were present on average in each
For the
meeting?
neighborhood meetings, from 30 to 50 on average. For planning commission, I would say about 20 to 30 on average.
And were the consultants present
Yes.
at all meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have our project website that's been up since January that provides access to the documents.
So this has been on
full
our
maps.
website since January.
We have definitely provided extensive public outreach, and public information has been posted and made available.
Has this meeting today been properly advertised?
Yes, it's been advertised in the Miami Herald. In
If
the Miami
you
Herald.
cannot do that. I am not speaking to you. I am speaking to the director. This is a meeting. This is a council meeting. Have respect for us who labor here. Go ahead.
Yes, published in the Miami Herald.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hill, you may speak now.
Laura Hill, 13075 Griffin Boulevard. I have 3, I could have been up here all night, but I'm not going to be. So I narrowed it down to 3 things that I want to put on record. Number 1, I'm very pleased about the bioswale aspect of this new land development regulation. I understand that there will be a planning regulation, and you'll have to get a permit for that. I would really like to see the permit not have a fee accompanying it, like when you paint your house, you have to run it through the city, but there's no fee, because I believe we shouldn't discourage people from doing these sustainable activities. So again, I think it's important to follow the process, but I really would hope there's not a fee accompanied to creating a bioswale or sustainable landscaping. The next thing I want to talk about is the boards, the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission. I strongly oppose non-residents being allowed to serve on those boards. I think it's imperative that they live and be invested in North Miami, and quite frankly, the suggestion that non-residents serve on those two boards is insulting to board members. The last thing I want to say is when I look at the area that I live in, one of the problems we face is aged, run-down apartment complexes. I'd love to see interest from developers come in, but we can't seem to attract any. I would like to see the structured parking exempted from the height requirements. Thank you.
Maureen O'Brien, 12120 Northeast 11th Court. I'm here again to oppose to express my concern for the vote on the zoning regulations. As was stated, this is something that has not been updated frequently, and we have more updates than we've had in a long time. I think this warrants sufficient time for everyone to process. This is a very large city. To have a turnout of 30 residents at each meeting is rather pathetic, and suggests that we could do better to recruit a representation of a larger audience at these meetings. I really want to believe that we have the brain power within this city to gather those residents at each meeting. I also have some concerns about the updates that are on the website, as you mentioned. There seems to be a lack of detail that's expressed, and often it seems inaccurate. I have been present at some of the previous meetings, and when updates have been made, I'm not sure that today we are even sure what we are being presented on, because I'm not sure that information has been updated to the public in enough time, sufficient time that we've all been able to process it. Specifically, parking exemptions that were mentioned, previous concerns that were stated at prior meetings, what would happen if there were zoning changes, what parking would be provided to new residents of different structures, how does that change driving patterns on residential streets if there is not sufficient parking provided for those residents, and suddenly residential streets become overflowed with excessive parking for tall buildings. Thank you for your time.
Public hearing is still open.
Howard Tonkin, 12600 Griffin Boulevard. I was really dissatisfied with the process of the meetings that we went through. I found it a little condescending, patronizing to the residents. We all got little post-its that were sort of prioritized by the consultants, and mine was sort of stuck in the bottom left corner, kind of thrown off to the side. We need to do radical steps in our city to deal with climate change. We need to embrace really bold measures, high density, parking underneath. This will save residents in the events of storm surges and that sort of thing. We really need to look at some really innovative measures of how to take on the issue of climate change. Large areas of our city are going to have to be abandoned, eventually turned into passive green space, and we're going to have to go vertical with high density living. It's a reality of climate change. The latest scientific studies just tripled the rate of sea level rise. So let that soak in for a minute, pardon the pun. We really need to think about doing stuff in our city that just above and beyond. If you go to the west coast of Florida, everywhere has parking underneath the structures, and people live on the second story. Same thing in Darwin in Australia, which is also hit by cyclones regularly. So with with what we need to do in North Miami is identify every single concrete and asphalt area that can be turned into green space that can mitigate water into the ground, because the only thing that we can use in our city to fight saltwater intrusion is the gravity of fresh water moving down. So every surface that's covered with concrete and asphalt does not allow water to mitigate into the aquifer, rather than encourages salt water to rise from below, and the saltwater intrusion is already beyond Northeast 6th Avenue. So we really have a crisis cooking. Basically what we're looking at is North Miami, Opa-locka, and Miami Gardens are the 9th Ward of New Orleans times 100. Thank you.
My name is Joseph Yates. I am an architectural engineer and designer of 35 years, now retired. Excuse me, Your Honor, Dr. Mayor. I am...
my good friend, can you just state your address?
The congruency,
your
the word for this planning activity is congruency.
I'm sorry. Can you just please state your address for the record?
I just did.
Oh, you did?
245 Northwest 133rd Street.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
The word for this particular planning is congruency. You do have a problem in RISE, and that is to say in codes, in respect to the high rise of the buildings. This code was made for the corridor that faces Miami International Airport, which processes about 42 million people a year. And people were having problems with the heights of the buildings, the landscaping, and the whole, and all the rest. In your case, you don't have that. That particular code claim is at least 30 to 40 years old. You are in a corridor facing Opa-locka International Airport, which is going to be a relief for Miami International Airport commercially. So you're going to have a lesser number of flights. Your buildings can incorporate at a savings to the project their parking beneath the residential areas and allow yourself enough landscaping breadth to complement the community.
I'm there.
Thank you so very much. Oh, by the way, Mr. Mayor, when are you going to, is anybody going to address the TPS thing? No, really. We have the French-speaking citizens are wonderful citizens. They are contributing to North Miami, and we don't need a vacuum on that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is William Reynolds. I live at 950 Northeast 123rd Street. I'm concerned about this being an LDR meeting is what I thought I was coming to. Obviously, it's not, and I do think that we do need to have a public hearing on this before we go take any votes on this. I live right across the street from the 124th Street Development Project, and I'm very concerned about the value of my property, as well as there's not enough parking as it is at this point. So, and I believe that the parking is going to become very problematic, as well as the zoning that we have going on there. I was living in a residential zone. Now all of a sudden it's commercial. That came upon me way too quickly, and I just would like to have a little more time to get the explanation as to why we have that going on. The flooding in on my street is already really bad, so with the addition of a 10-story or an 8-story building right across the street from me, it's going to be causing sinkhole possibilities and many other things. So at this point, I really don't think that we should take a vote on this tonight, that there should be a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reynolds. I want to remind everyone, this happens to be an ordinance, I believe, and this is the first reading. So you will have an opportunity to come to another meeting and go over this very article, so, and be heard as well. I see no one coming.
Everybody's holding back. William Prevotel, 11950 North Bayshore Drive. There really are 100 things that could be mentioned tonight, but I'd like to bring up the one item which I think has the biggest impact across the entire city, and that is that our entire city zoning is underwhelming, and basically it's designed to be infeasible. It's not going to happen because it economically does not work. There was a reason why Biscayne Landing had 250 feet to make a feasible project. Yet nothing else in the city is nearly that height, barely half of that. And then we find out that Biscayne Landing gets another 200 feet on top of their 250 feet. And you'd think that's because they're going to have structured parking underneath. But no, of all the properties in their entire city, there's only one project location that has exempted structured parking to their benefit. Biscayne Landing. So they can go 450 feet plus another 50 or 100 or whatever they want. Pretty strange that the entire rest of the city is compromised. Now, Scott, we had a conversation earlier, and you're kind of concerned that, good God, this might benefit developers or it might result in a good project. And I got to tell you, if you think it's going to result in a good project, I think that's why you're up there. I think you want to do everything possible to make the best schools, the best commercial, the best retail, the best everything in this city. If you're there to hold it back, and Scott, I know you've been there for a long time, right? A lot of years? 50 years this city has gone nowhere. We've got 3 warehouses. We've got Mocha, Whole Foods, and Home Depot. Congratulations. Congratulations. Does anybody ever leave home? Let's let the city move forward. Let's not be in the same place and run in the same place forever. This is your chance. These buildings that even start now, even if you got notice tomorrow, will not start for years. This is your chance. Please live up to it. Thank you.
Hello again, Marisol at 1270 Northeast 124th Street.
Sorry,
yes,
Mr.
zoning.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt, Marisol.
Oh, no, okay.
I didn't say the first time you didn't say a last name. I'm just going to ask that you state a last name this time, as because you said Marisol and gave your address both
forgive
times,
me,
just in
Marisol
case.
Medina.
Sir.
That's
Because we want to
good.
have the record straight. There are minutes that are
I
being taken that are
understand.
public record, and if that's not stated, then nobody will know who
No
Marisol
problem,
was.
Scott. I don't mind. All right. So, I said at the beginning. Okay. So I'm very concerned about zoning. It's huge. I mean, I just fought really hard to get my zone to be non-industrial, and it feels like it's sneaking up on us. I mean, power lines are being put in, and a lot of movement is being done, and it's a huge concern. I mean, I want development in North Miami. I think it would be great, but at what cost, and how is it going to be done? There's a lot of questions in that, and these maps are kind of scary with all of the industrial zones wanting to move in. So I'm also very concerned about the zoning for that building that was supposed to go in downtown. You know, the square footage keeps changing and being modified, and a lot of things keep changing, and it feels somewhat sneaky. I mean, I'm not super involved. This is a completely foreign thing for me, but I'm trying to be involved, and I want things to go smoothly for everybody involved, industrial as well as commercial. I mean, residential. So yeah, I have a huge question about the square footage and how that's going to be affected in that zone for that new building. And, well, thank you for your time. I just wanted to make that quick reference.
Rochelle, Rochelle Hill, 847 Northeast 145th Street. I would just like to ask a few questions. First of all, was this document that's being shared today is what was presented during the planning meeting, or was the planning meeting for just that, to plan to get to this point? Is that what the meetings were about? Was the planning sessions to get to this point to present the changes and the summary of the changes? Is that that's a question I was asking.
Go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Yeah, ask all your questions. And
During public comments, you should ask all the questions, and then maybe you
Oh,
can
okay.
instruct us to answer if you want.
Okay, absolutely. I could just keep going. That was one of the things. And I wanted to ask that because I do appreciate the presentation and I do understand that this is the first reading. but perhaps for the second reading, the same presentation can be made with some more explanation. We already know that only 20 people showed up. You know, we know that most of the people in the room don't really know what in the world's going on. So we want to take that into consideration. So with that in mind, we need to have a little more meat in the presentation to explain some things. It appears that information is being left up to interpretation. What's really going on here? What are the implications of these changes? I mean, as a resident, I would like to know what are the implications of these changes. How is it going to affect us as it relates to what the young lady said for future development? Will you be in a factory area all of a sudden? What's going to make what changes are going to be made to land value? And how do these changes improve our lives as residents? I mean, that's what we're here about. We're here to make sure that there's no idea of investment that we don't know anything about. And so we're sneaking changes in order to make those investments later. Because sometimes people know things that we don't know.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Judy Brown. I live at 1100 Northwest 120 Terrace in Sunkist Grove. I'm here to talk briefly about the proposal that's here tonight before the council. In District 4, we have a very unique problem. As you all know, we are the poorest district of the city, but we are trying to keep our heads above water. In this proposal, with the new zoning changes that's proposed, with the increase in the buildings and all of the proposed changes that have been presented, especially for 7th Avenue, I still am struggling with the impact that it's going to cause to our residents in Sunkist Grove. Right now, as stated in the Miami Times in June article by my own council person, lack of development has contributed to low property value, trash, drugs, litter, and other things in Sunkist Grove. Well, if this is allowed to go through and we get the structures and the high rise and all the impact and the parking, what then will happen to Sunkist Grove? We are struggling as it is, services, litter, and then the liquor aspect of it, bringing alcoholic beverages there. We certainly do not need anything like that. All of these things sound good on paper, and they look good, and we need development. We need jobs. But we need to look at the type of development that we want to bring to our area, things that will not negatively impact our city, not only in Sunkist Grove, but throughout North Miami. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Just real quick, I know this is public forum. I just want to, Ms. Brown, just want to make a real quick point.
She can go. You missed it.
Yeah, real quick. You can say you stated something in the paper. The city did reply to the Miami Times. I never said anything. They didn't use a quote. They just made a statement. And we spoke to the reporter and the editor. Where did it come from? They don't know. So just to be corrected.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Public hearing is still open, I guess.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Kevin Burns, 2065 Alamanda Drive. I was one of the people who attended the Planning Commission meeting. Remember, the Planning Commission is made up of 7 residents that each and every one of you appoint that represent the community. I was at a meeting from 7 o'clock at night till 12:45 in the morning. I was at a second meeting that went from 7 o'clock in the morning to 2:15 a.m. in the morning. And I have to commend the city staff, the Planning Commission, the attorney, and the consultant for working together. It was not an adversarial position. The Planning Commission asked questions, and the consultant replied, and staff replied, and they came up with great recommendations to you. I've been around here a long time, And it was stated that the last time it was done was in 2009, and when I was mayor, it had not been done in 25 years, and it was very difficult. But to this day, I said we made a mistake because we didn't go far enough. People were so concerned that we might turn into Brickell or have a little bit bigger building somewhere than somewhere else. I regret to this day that I did not push back and that we moved the city of North Miami forward and create more jobs than we had the opportunity. Don't make the same mistake. The recommendations are here. I don't agree with every single sentence, but I don't have to. But it's a good plan, good recommendations. And one of the things is about the reducing from 2 acres to a half acre. There's over 100 pieces of property in Mr. DeSome's district and Councilman Beneme's district, down Dixie Highway, that they're little half acres, they're triangles, they're all these odd size. Nobody's going to develop
Mr. Burns, I'm sorry. I can't make any exception
you can take me
to
to the side,
anyone.
but take these serious.
Yes.
Your staff did a good job.
We will.
Planning Commission did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Each?
Kenneth Each.
Should I say Chief Each?
Chief Each.
I'm sorry.
Retired Each. Good guy Each. Whatever. Veteran Each. Kenneth Each, 776 Northeast, 125th Street. Commissioner Each. I'm on the planning
There you
commission.
go. That's what I was looking for.
Personally, Mayor, I got to say, I went to all the meetings. I went to the Chinatown meeting. We did the two marathon planning commission meetings, plus read all this material. I must have put in a good 35 to 40 hours on this. We made recommendations. They weren't made in the wind. You know, for some reason, this city and its mentality and its psyche has always been against growth, high-rise, dynamics. Well, it's time that we have dynamics in this city. I look at the Chinatown project. Yes, it's not perfect, but it is dynamic. We have a transportation overlay area. The Land Use Institute said you should work, live, and play in the same area. When I look what's going on downtown, when I look what's happening in North Miami Beach, one tower that's going up there right now just added 18% to the ad valorem tax. Look at all the good that we could do with that. Why are we so afraid to have pedestal parking? Why are we so afraid to have high-rise, increase our density? You know, this is like, we're going to get a new self-storage place, but that's terrific. I mean, what are we doing? We want to have a vibrant city, but if we bury our heads in the sand, we're not going to have it. There's nothing wrong with change. Change for the betterment. I've been in this city over 40 years, and I want to cry. I had an office when I was undercover downtown, across from the Miami Herald in an old nursing home. I go down there today, and it's beautiful. Mr. Mayor, we made a lot of changes to this plan, and I hope you'll accept them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your comments.
I'm Hector Medina, 1270 Northeast, 124th. I attended the meeting and I expressed my concerns to Tanya, who told me to speak with my council person, which I did, but I still see the same thing. The street next to me is changed to industrial, which means that Spotmaster can come back and put their dry cleaner there. So no way. You need more time. This is too premature. It was poorly done, and the input of the citizens was not taken into good regard. So take your time, throw this in the garbage, and start all over again.
Public hearing is still open. I see none. Public hearing is now closed. You get to speak at the next meeting on this item. Thank you very much. Now, dear colleagues, let's do what we do best: analyze, opine, discuss, and make decisions. The way that I propose to do this, so we can move in a more efficient manner. Now, mind you that you will have opportunity to speak at citizen forum at the end of the meeting. So what I have done, I've checked all the proposed amendments that I'm going to bring to the public and to the dais as well. and each member will have the opportunity to do the same. And I think, Mr. Clerk or Attorney, when we make those amendments, we have to open public meetings. No, no, no. Okay, so we'll make them and then we'll do.
If you're going to move the way you suggest, then
Yeah.
I think you should all vote on whatever amendments that each member makes.
Okay.
So if you make certain amendments, you can vote on the amendments. But to do all of them at once, I think it might be a little bit.
Okay, so each member will make their amendments and then we'll vote on them.
If that's the way you want to.
That would be very efficient. If you don't mind.
Can I say something?
Mm.
If we all go through our changes and we have a discussion on it, then maybe the next council person won't have that as a discussion item.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe
Yeah, so that's my point. If I have a list of amendments and then you may have some of the same amendments that I had that I
sure
do,
there's gonna be overlap.
so at that time, then that member will know to squash it out because it's been voted on.
Been voted on.
Yeah. So my amendments, I'm going to allow Madam Director séjour that we discussed. I didn't add anything. Did I just based on the recommendations made by the Planning Commission? Again, we appointed every single member on the Planning Commission were appointed by us. So we appointed them to advise us, and we employ staff, so who are actually professionals. They are well vested in what they do, and that's why I'm taking the leap of faith with other advice that I've gotten from other municipal workers and professionals. So with that, Madam Director, please state my amendments so that they be heard and.
Okay, I'm reading from the Planning Commission's recommendation that's included as attachment 5 to the staff report. This was uploaded online, so for the members of the public that would like to see those recommendations from the Planning Commission. Specifically, you had notations on section Article 3-1407 pertaining to the impact fee schedule, and there was a recommendation from the Planning Commission to remove the schedule itself from the LDRs and to have it as a standalone document. You're recommending to accept that change. Moving down to Article 4, Section 302 for the Planned Development District. There's a recommendation for modification of comprehensive plan to require a combination of 2 or more uses to constitute mixed use. The Plan Commission's recommendation is that be modified to 2 or more. The comprehensive plan requires 3. So your recommendation is to reject that recommendation from the Planning Commission and to leave it at 3 as stated in the comprehensive plan. Article 4, Section 302, B2, A and B. There's a recommendation from Planning Commission to reduce the minimum acreage for the PD district from 2 acres to half an acre, and you're recommending that be accepted. And there's also a recommendation to remove the minimum average width and depth of 100 feet. You're recommending to accept that change as articulated by the Planning Commission. Over to Article 5, recommendation for accessory use under Article 5-101E. And the recommendation is for off-street parking structures to add a P, which means permitted use, to District 5, R5, R6, M1, and BZ. And you're recommending to support that item, that amendment. Right below that, we have for drive-through to be allowed within the NRO district. Currently, within the LDRs, those are prohibited to encourage a pedestrian-oriented environment. And you're supporting what's currently in the LDRs and rejecting the recommendation of the Planning Commission on that item. Moving down to Article 5, 104I, also Section 4-305C2. It says to strike the prohibition on drive-throughs in the NRO again, and that's a recommendation to reject that recommendation from the Planning Commission. Moving on to Article 5, 109B6, pertaining to open-air dining on public property, to strike through the prohibition on planters, to allow for planters to be included on public property for outdoor dining, and you're saying yes to support that amendment to include that in the
I thought
LDRs.
you were going to list where good you were going to state only the ones that I said yes to.
Okay, so
Because
only the yes, you don't want the no's.
No, I don't want the
some
no's
are
because
just blank.
they're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so moving down to Article 5, 106, definition, drop-in childcare. This is included as a provision that the parents be on-site where unforeseeable and unnecessary for these licensed facilities, that the parents be allowed to also be off-site. And you're recommending to support that amendment. Under Article 5-110A, solid waste containers, mechanical equipment, strike or as approved by the Development Review Committee, and amend an opaque gate, and you're striking through may, shall be used on the fort side. And this provides for certainty to prevent views of solid waste containers, and you're supporting that amendment as recommended by the Planning Commission. Down to Article 5-2307, pruning or trimming standards. And there's new language that was recommended by the Planning Commission. It's reflected as an underline to include the new language. And it should now read, tree pruning or trimming shall be permitted without a permit, provided that the owner follows acceptable pruning trimming practices. So there's no language that actually states that pruning or trimming are allowed without a permit, even though staff confirms this was so. So this language you're saying is acceptable to be added. We have 3 additional supporting language. Also, under the definitions, we have from Planning Commission additional language for what defines a school or what constitutes a school. School means an educational institution, public, private, or charter is the new word that was added in, or charter. So you're saying yes to support that. Under definitions, again, even with such as art and dance, change to such as fine, visual, liberal, and or performing arts has been added in, and you're supporting that amendment. And then the last one is for the definition of churches to be expanded to religious institutions. So striking the word churches to religious institution, and that's a support. And that concludes all the supporting amendments from the Planning Commission.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Ms. Sejour. Ms. Sejour, do you have copies of all that for us to take a 5-minute recess and read?
We do. It's attachment 5 in your staff report. And we have extra copies if there are members of the public that want it. So what I just read were just specifically the things that the mayor said to pick from their list of recommendations.
I'm looking at it.
No, you have to make copies. You would have, I agree.
As I understood what the mayor just said, these are his recommended changes, his recommended amendments.
What he's accepting from Planning Commission.
Yes.
So the list you have is everything from Planning Commission.
Right.
And what I
But
read is just his check marks.
What you just read through that the mayor is suggesting, do you have a copy of that?
What he
No.
suggested, like
What you
he's
just
checked
read
off,
into the record, do you have a copy of that?
we have that online, is what
No,
he
you
said.
have it right here in your hand.
There's a vast difference between the document in its entirety, which I believe is online,
Correct.
and the amendments being suggested by the mayor.
What he's accepted is what you're asking. No, we don't have that online. That's just me reading it into the record.
Right.
Okay,
That's what I want to look at, because you just machine gunned through that. And as I was just getting ready to defend this process to the citizens, I'm now as lost as many of them
Okay,
might be.
let me make another suggestion.
So-
Let me make another suggestion. Let me make another suggestion. Okay, now while I suggest that now that all of these amendments have been read, we can do the same for everyone, and then after that we can make copies for every one of us, and then we can take a recess so that we can look at each other's in the propositions.
I disagree with that, because procedurally we would go one by one and either get a motion to amend, seconded, and passed, or no motion is
Okay,
made.
so let's do it one by one then.
But it's not fair for as a councilman. As a councilman, I don't.
You want to make a copies of these?
As a councilman, I'm hearing all of this for the very first time. It was coming too fast for me to be able to digest it. If we want to take these one by one, I think it would be fair if the mayor, and I have all sorts of questions as to why you were reading the mayor's suggestions, and it's not the mayor reading the mayor's suggestions. But I'm going to let that go for right now. If the mayor wants to make a suggestion or an amendment, he would motion to approve. There would be a second for discussion. We flesh it out. We understand what we're voting on, and then we vote it up or vote it down. If we're going to try to just cram this all through at one time, I'm voting no on the entire thing tonight, and I came in intending to vote yes.
Okay, yeah.
May I respond?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. What I would suggest, because you do have.
And for the record, Mr. Attorney, am I allowed to ask CPND Director to read my amendments to the public and to the council? Am I allowed?
You may, yes, sir.
I may. I am allowed.
You're running the meeting, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
But I
No,
must say it's
it's-
highly irregular for a staff member to make a sitting city council member's presentation on their behalf.
Okay.
Highly irregular. I can't think of it another time that it was done.
Mr. Manager.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Mr. Cazell?
Said, I don't disagree, but you all make the rules for how you run your meeting.
Okay, Mr. Manager, so let's take one of them, each of them individually. And so we can start from section, from Article 1.
Well, can I make a statement?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Everyone, including the public, has a copy of this set of amendments.
I do not.
It's part of the agenda item.
Okay, is it posted online?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
I will endeavor to find it.
Okay.
You don't have it?
So.
Yeah, you have it. Do you have it, Mr. Gentleman?
It's attachment 5.
Everyone has a copy.
So what I'd like to suggest then.
And I'm asking about his recommendations,
No,
not
no, no,
everything.
yeah, that's no
His
problem.
recommendations are part of the record.
No. Let me finish my statement.
Okay.
The document that she just read from
is all online. I agree.
Okay. So what I would like to suggest for what she just read, identified as the mayor's yeses to the planning commission items, is what you just said. Go back, read them one at a time, and then allow you to vote yes, no, make a motion on those items. Because in my briefings with each of you, some of you have either concurred with some of these same things or not concurred with some of the same things. So that allows you to do your debate. And that would be solely on the planning commission. These are the planning commission recommendations. Okay? I just wanted to make that clear. So that would be my suggestion to the board.
Okay, so let's read them one by one.
Mayor,
Yeah.
Scott, Vice Mayor. Okay, if we're gonna read them one by one and decide whether or not,
Yeah.
our minute page is gonna be probably 30, 40 pages long. So this is what I would recommend to piggyback what he was saying and what Scott was saying. And you guys can take it or leave it. Everyone can have the same copy that the mayor, that Tanya just read. All everyone has to do is do exactly what the mayor did on their copy. Yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes, no, no. Everything you guys all agree on, it's already set aside. The ones you guys don't agree on, then we can read individually and vote on it whether or not you guys want to amend it to it. Because if we go one by one for every last one of them and then vote on the general ordinance, it's going to be time consuming and it's going to be a paperwork nightmare. But if you guys agree on 80%, then we don't have to vote on 80% of those things. So if you guys take Scott's advice, take a 5-minute recess, everyone get theirs and they do exactly what you did. You pick and choose which one you want, and the ones you guys all agree on, we can wait and vote at that at once, and you guys, whatever you don't agree on, then we can vote individually. Or we can go and vote on them individually, and we're going to be here till 4 in the morning. What is your call?
Okay.
May I throw in my
Go ahead.
2 cents?
Go ahead.
Okay.
So I'm going to need a copy of that.
I have gone through, I'm sorry. I've gone through this. I went through the little book. I've gone through the big book. And the way it should be gone is we should go through it, going through it. Let's not go through a bunch of recommendations from A to Z and then go back. We should be going through article by article in order. We can't, to go start doing planning commission recommendations and then come back, because I've whittled it down greatly. I've met with staff. I've met with staff again. I've tried to whittle it down, but I've got just like 10 tabs. But I can't go just on what the planning commission is, because I've got my own comments that have nothing to do with the planning commission. We have got to go in order of this document. You can't just flip through it and then come back and address. And you have other items that if we do certain things, other things are going to be affected. I mean, we just can't go through the Planning Commission's recommendations, which I only saw for the first time yesterday. But I've been reading this document for over a month. This was sent, I mean, I've been reading this since May. And I read the other one before that and met with staff. So we've got to go through it in a organized manner.
Yeah, I've gone through the documents many times as well. I've met with, not only have I read them, I've sat with the CPND director, as well as the manager and the attorney numerous times on these items. Yes, the recommendations of from the PC came to my desk, and we discussed them yesterday. But after I done my assessment, like I said, every single member will have the opportunity to come up with your own amendments. This is not a Bible. This is not what I presented. These are simply my amendments. Out of the five of us, and each of us will present.
Article 1 through 7, and then go back to me in Article 1 through 7, and then go back to Scott 1 through 7, and out.
That's why we do it member by member by member. I mean, to me, it's the most efficient way.
We're going to go back.
Yeah, I present mine, you present yours. You know, the vast majority.
We're gonna be here. We're gonna be here for hours, gang. Buckle up.
Can I?
Each person presents their own amendments, and then you vote on them.
Can I say something, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Of course, through different briefing with staff, I was fine with the document. I think we've been going through it over the past year or so. I only had 3 recommendations. However, I saw this, this morning. So I do wanted to address some of the Planning Commission recommendation. So I didn't. My briefing with the attorney with everyone else was not based on this, which I don't mind. So whichever way, I'm ready to be here until 4. It seems like that's what it is. However you want to do it, Mr. Mayor, I'll support it.
So the way it is, so there's about 34 items here, so we're going to vote 34 times.
I did not. No. We only going to vote on the ones that I accepted from reading the document. Only, and then they're going to come up with theirs too. The ones that I may say no, that I don't accept, they may accept them, and they will present them to us. If they have a 4 out of 5 votes, then it passes.
LDRs doesn't need a supermajority, does it?
Do we need a 4 or do we need a 3?
So the way this is going to work is, as you're doing your amendments, that only requires a majority of you to vote on the amendments. But the LDRs, when you're done with the document, it's 4.
When we're done with it, it's 4. Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute recess, so we can get the documents to the members.
I'll talk privately.
Thank you very much.